Today is September 29th, 2020. Beautiful fall day here in Seattle. I'm headed out to Ketchum, Idaho, Sun Valley, Idaho, to do some hiking, see some friends and family, and to pay my respects to someone who has meant a lot to me in the course of my life, a writer named Ernest Hemingway. Off I go. I'm traveling with my old friend, J.D., an English teacher and poet who's always up for any adventure, especially if it involves hiking, literature, and guitars. I've read most of Ernest's books, some many times. I'm no hunter, fisher, or bullfight aficionado. Whiskey and soda's not my drink of choice. But I feel a deep connection to Hemingway. His sensory love of landscapes, weather, and seasons have filled me with a great respect for nature and the joys to be found there. I owe him much. This trip is a way of saying thanks. Now we're entering Hemingway country, a land of rugged hills, countless creeks and streams, and deep blue skies. Ketchum, Idaho was the last stop on Ernest's adventurous, momentous, and ultimately tragic life journey. Our first stop is the Hemingway Memorial overlooking Trail Creek. Here, Ernest casts a steady eye up the valley. Below are words from a eulogy he wrote for a friend, but that could apply to him as well. Next morning, we joined my sister and brother-in-law and their dog, Maddie, and hiked up Proctor Mountain, up through sage and golden aspens into the bluest of skies. Why do I call him Ernest? Because it feels like I've known him all my life. A kind of spirit friend, feisty and exacting, but also benevolent. He first came to Sun Valley in the fall of 1939, spending his mornings working on what was to become his classic novel, For Whom the Bell Tolls, and his afternoons hunting and fishing with an ever-growing circle of friends. The next day, we hiked up Taylor Canyon into thick white smoke blown in from the coastal wildfires. It looked like another world up here, less contemporary and more sci-fi or dystopian. How did I get started on this journey? I was 16 on a student trip and looking for something to read. I remember my roommate reaching into his suitcase and flinging a thin paperback at me. The Snows of Kilimanjaro and Other Stories. It was as if till then everything I'd read was stuffy or stale, and here was writing as clear as a mountain stream and yet as gritty and pungent as campfire smoke. I was hooked. The following day broke crystal clear. We drove over Galena Pass where the hills trickle down to form the Great Salmon River. On viewing this valley, Ernest once said, you'd have to come from a test tube and think like a machine to not engrave all of this in your head so that you never lose it. At Redfish Lake, we boarded a boat and bombed across to our trailhead. Here we saw Ernest's beloved Sawtooth Mountains up close. On our last night in Ketchum, we dined at one of Ernest's favorite restaurants, the Christiania, still in business after all these years. This is where he ate his last dinner, sitting at his favorite table in the corner. To friends who saw him that night, he seemed in good spirits. The truth was far darker. On our way out of town, we stopped at the cemetery to pay our respects. Ernest's grave is surrounded by those of family members and also of his extended Ketchum family, kindred spirits with whom he fished, hunted, laughed, philosophized, and caroused. Heading back to the car, I picked up what I thought was a piece of litter. Turned out to be a personal note left for Ernest by an admirer that had blown far afield. So I walked back and anchored the note under the dark gray rock I'd brought from the shores of Puget Sound. Our last stop before heading home was Silver Creek in Golden Prairie country south of Ketchum. Ernest came here often to hunt birds or fish the glassy, smooth waters. Today, the area is a nature preserve established through the leadership of Jack Hemingway, Ernest's oldest son. In The Old Man and the Sea, Ernest tells of a fisherman who starts out poor and ends up poorer, but in the course of struggle reveals his strength, courage, humility, dignity, and hope, qualities many people possess, but often go unnoticed and unsung. So I take this from him: to be alert to the greatness in others. You don't need to be rich or brilliant or famous to lead a good, meaningful, even great life. Each time we take a step closer to who we really are, we grow stronger. And to embrace the seasons in every shade of bright and dark and know that time moves fast. The sun rises and sets and hurries to rise again, and our days are short, so cherish them. It was almost time to go. JD and I grabbed our guitars and hiked along the creek. We strummed a while in this beautiful part of Idaho that Ernest loved so much, and then we said our goodbyes to Hemingway.